Let me ask you about one other challenge facing the European Union. Fixing the economy has got to be number one, but one of the other challenges over the next 3 years is going to be figuring out whether the European Union is going to watch one of its biggest, arguably one of its more important member states, the United Kingdom, actually leave the Union altogether. Do you think it would matter if it did?
I think it would be a travesty. It would be a travesty for Europe, it would be a travesty for the UK, and I'll be honest, it would be a travesty for Finland. The UK is a great partner. It's an economic reformer. We need the voice of the UK in Europe, and that's why I've been very staunch in defending a strong position for the UK inside the European Union.
Is that what you call it? Your words resonated across Europe recently. You said the UK is in a vicious spiral of self-inflicted marginalisation.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I'm trying to restate
if the UK is marginalising itself, why does it really matter if it's in or out? If it's stuck on the margins anyway, it's really not doing much use inside the Union, is it?
We would all care for many reasons. Number one, if you want to liberalise free trade, who do you want on your side? In the EU, you want the UK. If you want to liberalise the internal market, who do you want on your side? Inside the EU, the UK. If you want to reform the financial markets, who do you want as a commissioner? Well, a Brit.
So, do you believe that David Cameron, in making a promise to the British people that there would be an in-out referendum by 2017 if he wins the next British election, which is of course coming up quite soon, do you believe he was fundamentally irresponsible?
I was actually the only and first pro-European to applaud him for the speech. It's of course a risk because there's a triple lock. Number one, he needs to win the elections. Number two, he needs to renegotiate the treaty. And number three, he needs to win a referendum. It's a high-risk strategy, there's no question about it.
Well, it's a high-risk strategy which opens up more clearly than ever before the pathway to Britain leaving the EU.
There is a possibility.
So was it a mistake?
If Britain leaves the EU, it was a mistake. But if this then reinstitutes the position of the UK inside the European Union, then it was not a mistake.
All right, so you face a challenge along with other EU leaders figuring out what you're prepared to do to allow David Cameron to return to his own people and say, look, I've got this great new renegotiated deal with Europe. He wants, it seems, to fundamentally modify the principle of freedom of movement inside the EU. Are you prepared to consider treaty change on that basis?
On that, I disagree with him. I think one of the greatest achievements of the European Union is free movement on people. And to be quite honest, I'd like to give an EU Champions Medal to the UK for opening its border to labour from Eastern and Central Europe in 2004. I think that's the type of movement we need inside the European Union. So if there were any breaks on the free movement of people, I would be very reluctant to deal with that.
So here you sit as a man saying we must do what it takes to keep Britain inside the European Union, and you've now told me that on the key issue that Cameron is taking to Brussels and saying you've got to give me something significant on this principle, you're saying no.
Yeah, I disagree with him. The fact that I want the UK to be in the EU is economically based, but there are many issues on Europe where I disagree with him. I'm much, much more pro-European, for instance, than David Cameron is. I would just argue that Britain has actually benefited greatly from free movement.
Yeah, but hang on, we just seem to be skirting around a fundamental paradox in your position. You said that you admired Cameron's courage for putting this issue before the British people. Well, the paradox is that you're going to be the man and one of the leaders who may well deliver the death blow to Britain being in Europe.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think usually when the EU or the UK is with its back against the wall, some kind of a solution is found at the end of the day. Remember that you got your opt-outs from the euro. Remember that you got an opt-out from Schengen. And at one stage you also had an opt-out from the social protocol. Never underestimate the capacity of European politicians or lawyers to find a solution, even for David Cameron.
So what kind of a European Union is it going to be with more and more opt-outs? And who knows, if Britain gets them, maybe other countries will want them too. Opt-outs maybe on the freedom of movement principle, maybe on the notion of an ever closer union, because David Cameron really doesn't like that. I mean, it's called a European Union, but very soon, if you go down this track, it ain't going to be a meaningful union at all.
I'm a sad case. I'm an institutional nerd and I wrote my PhD at the LSE on these opt-outs and on flexibility. They've always existed. Denmark has them, the UK has them, you have transition periods. The EU is very much a patchwork union. Some policies all of us adopt, others stay outside. I think the euro is a great example, defense is another example, Schengen is a third example, but the key element's always there, and they are the free movement of goods, services, people, and money. And as long as we stick to those and the general principles, I think the union will stay intact. But it's quite normal, you know, we're 28 member states, we're 500 million people. Of course, we have to apply a little bit of flexibility, and we have applied a lot of flexibility to the UK.